July 1982. The Falkland Islands. A British armoured vehicle is moving at 80 kilometers per hour across terrain that has already stopped every wheeled vehicle the task force brought south. The ground is peat bog. It swallows wheels. It defeats conventional tracked vehicles by exhausting their engines through constant track slippage. This vehicle is not being stopped by any of it. It weighs 7.9 tons. It carries a 76mm gun that can penetrate the armor of any vehicle Argentina has deployed. It has just set a Guinness World Record for the fastest confirmed speed by a production tank anywhere on Earth. The vehicle is the FV-101 Scorpion, the lightest tank the British Army has ever fielded, and in the Falklands, it is proving something the defense establishment has spent 40 years trying to disprove: that small, light and fast sometimes beats heavy, slow and protected. To understand why Britain built the FV-101 Scorpion, you need to understand the strategic problem Britain faced in the late 1960s. The British Army of the Rhine was committed to defending West Germany against a Soviet armoured breakthrough. That role required Chieftain main battle tanks, heavy and powerful and slow, but Britain also had commitments that the Chieftain could not meet. Far East deployments, African interventions, the jungle of Borneo and the desert of Aden, terrain where a 55-ton main battle tank could not be airlifted, could not cross local bridges, and could not operate without a logistics chain that simply did not exist in the regions where Britain expected to fight. The British Army needed a different kind of vehicle entirely. In 1968, the Alvis Company of Coventry began development of what would become the Combat Vehicle Reconnaissance Tracked family. The requirement was specific and demanding. The vehicle had to weigh less than 8 tons. It had to fit inside a Hercules C-130 transport aircraft. It had to be airdroppable by parachute. It had to be amphibious without preparation. And it had to carry a gun capable of defeating any armoured vehicle likely to be encountered in the low-intensity conflict environments where British forces would be operating. Every one of these requirements pushed against every other one. A gun capable of defeating armoured vehicles required a heavy breech, a heavy barrel, and heavy ammunition. Weight that had to come from somewhere else in the vehicle. Alvis solved the problem by using aluminum armour rather than steel. Not because aluminum was stronger, it is not. Aluminum is lighter, and at the thicknesses required for the weight budget, it could defeat small arms and shell fragments. Against tank guns and heavy anti-tank weapons, the Scorpion's armor offered no protection at all. That was not considered a fatal flaw. The vehicle was not designed to fight tanks. It was designed to find them, observe them, call in artillery or airstrikes, and then move away before the tanks could respond. Speed was the armor, not steel. Velocity. The FV-101 Scorpion that entered British Army service in 1972 was remarkable for what it was not as much as for what it was. It was not heavily armoured. Maximum protection was 12.7 millimeters of aluminum, enough to stop rifle fire and shell splinters, nothing more. It was not large. Length was 4.79 meters. Width was 2.18 meters. A vehicle that a single soldier could almost encircle with outstretched arms. It was not slow to produce. Alvis built the Scorpion with a high degree of parts commonality with other vehicles in the CVRT family, reducing cost and simplifying logistics. What it was fast. The Jaguar J60 petrol engine produced 190 horsepower in a vehicle weighing under 8 tons. The power-to-weight ratio of 23.8 horsepower per ton was higher than many main battle tanks twice its size. On roads, it reached 80 kilometers per hour. In the Guinness Book of World Records, that 80 kilometer per hour figure became official when a Scorpion crew achieved it during a timed run, making the FV-101 Scorpion the fastest production tank in the world at the time. The 76mm L23A1 gun fired high-explosive squash-head rounds capable of penetrating 200mm of rolled homogeneous armor. Against a BTR-60 or BRDM-2, the round was lethal. Against a T-55 or T-62, a careful crew engaging from the side or rear could achieve kills. The Scorpion also had one capability that distinguished it from almost every other armored vehicle in British service. It could swim. The aluminum hull was sealed. Flotation screens were attached to the vehicle's hull sides, raised before water entry, and provided the buoyancy needed to cross rivers and lakes. The tracks provided propulsion in water. A vehicle that weighed 7.9 tons, traveled at 80 kilometers per hour, mounted a 76mm gun, and could cross any water obstacle without bridges or engineer support, was exactly what the British Army needed for the deployment scenarios its planners feared. It was also the vehicle that performed best when those scenarios arrived unexpectedly. The Falklands War of 1982 was a scenario British planners had not included in their deployment models. When Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands on April 2, 1982, the British task force that sailed south included the Blues and Royals Regiment, part of the Household Cavalry. The regiment brought FV-101 Scorpions and FV-107 Scimitars, the Scorpion's companion vehicle in the CVRT family, carrying a 30mm Radan cannon rather than the 76mm gun. The Falklands terrain was the most demanding armoured vehicle environment Britain had operated in since the Second World War. Peat bog covering most of the islands, tussock grass, soft ground that had no bottom in places. Winter temperatures, no roads worth the name across most of the islands. Every wheeled vehicle in the task force was stopped by the peat. BV-206 articulated carriers could cross it. The Scorpion could cross it. The aluminum hull and relatively wide tracks of the Scorpion distributed its 7.9 tons across enough surface area that it floated across the peat where heavier vehicles sank and wheeled vehicles disappeared to their axles. During the advance on Stanley Scorpion crews engaged Argentine positions at night using the vehicle's passive image intensification night vision. On the night of June 11th to 12th, 1982, Scorpions and Scimitars of the Blues and Royals supported 3rd Battalion Parachute Regiment during the Battle of Mount Longdon. Argentine positions on the high ground above the paratroopers were engaged by 76mm and 30mm fire from Scorpions and Scimitars operating in darkness across terrain that Argentine commanders had classified as impassable for armor. The Argentine defenders had not planned for armored support because they did not believe armor could cross the ground between the British positions and the Argentine lines. The Scorpion proved them wrong by being light enough to cross it. The battle was won. Argentine resistance on Mount Longdon collapsed in part because fire that Argentine infantrymen expected to be able to suppress with small arms was coming from armored vehicles firing from positions they had not expected armor could occupy. In service, the Scorpion accumulated a record that its designers had hoped for but could not guarantee. The vehicle's combination of low ground pressure, amphibious capability, and air transportability made it the first choice for operations where conventional armor was impractical. Oman purchased Scorpions for operations in the Dhofar region. The terrain there, mountainous and accessible only by routes that could not support main battle tanks, was exactly the environment for which the vehicle had been designed. Iran purchased 250 Scorpions before the Islamic Revolution. Philippine forces used them for counterinsurgency operations in terrain where the alternative was no armor at all. Belgium operated Scorpions alongside its Leopard 1 fleet. Nigeria, Tanzania, Malaysia, Indonesia, and more than a dozen other nations found the combination of lightweight, air transportability, and genuine gun power addressed requirements that no other vehicle in their price range could meet. By the time production ended in 1996, approximately 3,000 FV-101 Scorpions had been built for British and export service. The British Army replaced its Scorpions with the Scimitar, Menk II, and later the Ajax reconnaissance vehicle, both significantly heavier, both significantly more capable against modern threats, and both significantly less able to operate in the soft ground, air-deployable scenarios where the Scorpion had excelled. A Scorpion can still be found in museum collections across Britain, Belgium, Indonesia, and several other former operator nations. One example at the Tank Museum in Bovington, Dorset, is maintained in running condition. When visitors watch it move across the museum grounds at demonstrating speed, what they see is the vehicle that the Guinness Book of World Records certified as the fastest production tank in the world. 7.9 tons. 76mm gun. 80 kilometers per hour. Swam rivers, crossed peat bog, supported paratroopers on a mountain in darkness at the bottom of the world. It was the lightest tank the British Army ever built. And in the Falklands, on a night in June 1982, it was exactly heavy enough,